Hello, everyone. My name is Natalie Armstrong-Motin, and today I have the great pleasure of interviewing Chief Judge from Santa Fe, New Mexico, Jeff McElroy. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you, Natalie?
I'm doing very well. Thanks so much for setting aside some of your valuable time for me today. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about your very unique practice. I know that it's not always common to have a practice that combines 3 different ADR processes, but because of your history as a judge, you are perfectly situated to provide mediation, arbitration, and settlement. Is that correct?
That's right. Sometimes what needs to be done on a case is mediation, and that's the right toolbox, I think, for some cases. And then other cases, arbitration is better because then the clients can sit and present the evidence to me, having heard a lot of cases, done a lot of bench trials as a district court judge in a general jurisdiction district. I'm used to making findings and listening to the evidence. So it allows me the flexibility to work with litigants.
Excellent, excellent. And then I know also you have a favorite kind of case. Tell me a little bit more about your favorite kind of case.
Well, when I was as a judge, just only recently retired, I really looked for cases where they were sort of hurtling toward a 5-day jury trial, where the jury trial would not have resolved the dispute and not made things better for anybody, and yet they had high emotions involved. They were usually people that were involved with each other in relationships that were going to likely be ongoing, and so it was the sort of the hard to resolve case that had already perhaps had been to mediation and didn't succeed. And so I would step off the bench and mediate those cases, and found that people had much better resolutions of their disputes that way.
So now that's a really unique preference for a provider, and something that I can easily understand your clients being able to greatly appreciate. So that if people are at the point of no return and facing failure, and it's really important for them to have an ongoing relationship one with the other, you're sort of the go-to guy in the southwestern states of the US, correct?
Yeah, I hope that that will be that's the thing that attracts people, I think, to coming to have work with me. I can also do it face-to-face here in Santa Fe. I like to travel. I don't charge for travel time if I go to Albuquerque or to Taos. So pretty much all of northern New Mexico is an area where I in person can show up and meet with parties. But I also use the Zoom platform to do disputes online. So if all the parties want to meet online because of the great distances we have in New Mexico, that would be their option. And then there are some cases where you may have someone who's out of state and they could appear at the mediation through an online platform with the other parties being in the room.
Right, and online dispute resolution, I think that a lot of people assume that it means that you'll do everything online, but I know that, for example, you can do some of the pre-hearing communications online and then do the actual mediation or arbitration face-to-face if that's the preference. You can do the whole thing online, so that it really is client service oriented, and that you can design whatever it is that they want or need, you know, so that it suits them the best. Is that correct?
Yeah, and in my practice, I do emphasize a lot of the front end work. I recently was presenting at the Advanced Mediation Conference in Houston with the ABA's DR section on avoiding impasse. And the thing that I learned in presenting that topic to the Institute was that the best way to avoid impasse is to have a lot of upfront work done. So if people know in advance where they're heading, what the issues are, what the emotions are going to be, then not only are the litigants prepared, but the mediators prepared, and you avoid impasse. And by working with emotions in the dispute, you give parties the reason to want to move the needle so that they can then find their own resolutions to their issues.
Right, exactly. And ultimately what we want is to help people find a durable, appropriate resolution or solution to their issues, so that they don't ever have to call us back.
Right, and I've worked hard as a district judge. I'm chair of the statewide ADR commission for the Supreme Court, and we're working to put mediations in the district courts, and particularly the rural courts of New Mexico, so that people can have an alternative to a jury trial. And by developing techniques within the rural district courts, we want to allow people to figure out their own ways to resolve these disputes. So now, as a retired judge, what I'm trying to do is present that that operation basically to people in private, so that they can come to me, they can work with me. I can help them decide whether they should do mediation or whether maybe arbitration would be a better option for them depending on the nature of their dispute, and work with the attorneys. I do work with pro se litigants, and because I was a general jurisdiction judge, I can work with business partnerships that are dissolving or domestic relations cases. So a lot of those have very similar bases in the dispute, and so it's a matter of just learning how to work with people and their emotions.
Exactly. And that was actually going to be my next question, is whether or not people have to have an advocate in the room. And so that's not necessary. In your mediation hearings, are you allowed the flexibility to help people find a solution that may or may not have something to do with the law?
Yeah, sometimes it's not legal issues that help to resolve the dispute. Sometimes it's emotional issues. Apologies is a classic example, but people expanding the pie, a way to avoid impasses to expand the pie and try to find other options. Obviously, it's important, particularly if people have attorneys, that the attorneys are able to advise them on the legal backgrounds, because you don't want to have people give up substantial rights without having legal advice, or you don't want to work out a resolution that would get them contrary to regulations or that sort of thing. So it's good for people to have legal advice when they're involved in these, and it's good for someone like myself as a mediator to be able to have that information. But you don't want to just work with the legal issues. If you could resolve it through simple legal issues, then you wouldn't need to have a mediation. You just go out in front of a judge. But a lot of times it just doesn't work out well that way. And also often it's a lot less expensive to deal with it this way than it is to do a long extended jury trial. And then, of course, after your jury trials, then you often have appeals. And in New Mexico, it can take a year to 18 months for those appeals to work their way through. And often you don't have a resolution, even though you've gone through the expense and difficulty of a jury trial.
Yeah, there are lots of really good reasons to use a mediator or an arbitrator. Confidentiality, cost, there's a therapeutic value to the client when they get to go into a mediation or an arbitration, because they get to speak for themselves. There are lots of really good reasons to hire a mediator or an arbitrator, in addition to the appeals processes and jury trials, etc. So this is really exciting work that you do, Jeff. I'm really pleased to get to know a little bit more about you. Very nicely done.
Well, thank you, and I'm looking forward to doing this. I just retired as a judge just a few months ago, and I think this will be exciting for me to be able to use different tools than I had available to me as a district judge. And I think I was unique as a district judge in that I often did use alternative dispute resolution. I think because of my role as chair of the ADR commission, I was more open to using those. But I've done mediation training for judges. I've been to the National Judicial College in Reno, where we did mediation for judges, and then just recently I spent a week in Reno helping to teach that course as a faculty assistant. So this is exciting for me to be able to model what I think is something that district court should be using, and be able to do it in kind of more of a private setting for people who want that.
Yeah, it definitely a more friendly setting. So, so if someone were interested in finding out more about you or the practice that you've built, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Well, they can reach me by email. My last name, mcelroy.jeff@gmail.com. I also have a website, which is nmdisputeresolution.com. It can be found on there, and I can also be found through my name on LinkedIn. So all of those would get access to me. My phone number works as well, 575-770-7697. Gets to me directly, so I can get back to people. And so those are all ways that people can be in touch with me. I'm opening an office and dispute resolution center here in Santa Fe, where I'll have rooms for people to be able to come to that center. But I also, as I said, travel around the state, so work out having rooms at the various, like the State Bar Association in Albuquerque, or and different law firms. So I can pretty much set up a place for people to meet to resolve disputes, or we can do it online if we have to.
Fantastic. And of course, I will put all of that contact information down below in the description bar, and I'll encourage everyone in the, in the American Southwest to contact Jeff McElroy if the case that you're involved in is compound, complex, or highly emotional. Jeff is definitely your go-to guy in that region. If you're not in that region, as we talked about before, Jeff is available to do online dispute resolution. So contact him, and you can use a platform like Zoom and let him help you find a solution. Jeff, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for taking the time to be with me.
Absolutely, my pleasure. As always, everyone, thanks very much for watching. Be good humans.